Hadithi yangu, my story. I tell it the way I lived it, the way I understand it, and the way it made me feel. It's my truth, my experience, my life. What's your story? Because we want to hear it. Welcome to Hadithi Yangu podcast, and my name is Cecilia Mlenga, your host and narrator.
Hi, Martha. Good evening from your end and good morning from my end.
Hi, Cecilia. How are you? It's really
I'm
nice
doing
to be here.
fantastic. It's lovely to meet you as well. I'm doing fantastic. How are you this evening?
I'm doing very well. I'm doing fine, and I'm super excited to talk to you.
Amazing. So, welcome to Hadithi Yangu once again. And I'm really, really excited for our listeners to hear your story and even the world. I believe stories heal and transform us. And your story today is one that I'm also very excited about, mainly because something that you experienced that I challenged and then ended up changing it into something that could uplift others around you and even in your community. Karibu sana. And just to get started, let's rewind a bit back to who is Martha, where are you from, and what's one thing that reminds you of home, where you're from precisely. I am from Mbeya. That should be southern Tanzania. And something that I remember from back home all the time is our Livingstone Mountains. They are the most beautiful view I've ever experienced my whole life. I am yet to find something that can compare to it. So every time I think about home, I always think about those Livingstone Mountains. Who is Martha? Where are you from? And what's something that reminds you of home?
Thank you so much, Cecilia. So, the formal answer would be that I am an education advocate, and I am the co-founder of a locally registered NGO here in Tanzania called Uplift Human Development Foundation. It's a mouthful, UHDF for short. But beyond that, I am someone that's very family-oriented. I'm very close to my family, especially my brother and his wife and their kids and my parents. And I'm someone that's people regard as nurturing. I've always been like the mother of my friend groups. And I'm also someone that enjoys good music, good food. Definitely, I'm a foodie. And yeah, just reading and writing as well. Where I'm from. So I'm from Tanga originally. My family's from Tanga. We come from a village that is in the Korogwe district. It's in the Usambara Mountains. It's called
Nice. I
Litindi.
love the Usambara.
Yes, it's lovely. We should have you visit when you come to Tanzania.
Oh my goodness. I would love to. I have visited, so I think I visited maybe about 4 years back, and absolutely beautiful. The Usambara Mountains are absolutely breathtaking. Yani, I think as a country, we're very blessed, to be honest. Overall
We are.
landscape and just nature, it's absolutely beautiful. So yeah, I can understand why you would love. Yeah.
Yes, certainly. The whole world is beautiful, but when God was making Tanzania, we are favored. Let's just say.
We are our favorite. He took time. He took time on us. Absolutely. I love that. And what's your latest read? I also enjoy reading. What's the latest novel book that you've read recently?
The latest book that I've been reading is Mastery by Robert Greene. And in essence, it's just a book that takes you through various figures from history, some well-known, others not as much. But in essence, they take you through their mentality and their mechanisms and methods to master whatever you are doing in life. Whatever it is that you're doing, not being satisfied with just being okay at it, but pushing for absolute mastery over it. It's a good read. I recommend.
Okay.
What about you? What have you been reading?
Okay, so I've been struggling just getting anywhere with the book. But I've been reading, what's it called? what's this book called? And you start a book and then you read a couple of pages and then you stop and then you're like, okay, I'll come back to this, and then blah, nothing. So I've been reading a book called Fools and Other Stories by Jambulo S. Dembele. So this is very African centered. I think this is a Kenyan author. And I've been reading mostly African literature, mainly because for a long time, and especially just overall my upbringing and just my educational background, I think most reads were Western influenced. So a lot of me is now trying to go back to African literature just to see what's different in our literature. And I think something that I've taken note of is that the way I'm able to tap into my imagination when I read African novels is very different to the novels that I used to read before, because they're so relatable. If it's a scene focused in some village and whatever, like, it's so much easier for me to paint a picture of what that is like. It's beautiful. So I've been more drawn into reading those. But to be honest, I think I've read maybe 10, 15 pages so far. But yeah.
That sounds really interesting, and I can definitely appreciate you seeking out African literature more. Having studied a Western curriculum myself, I think I really
Yeah.
appreciate when I come across literary pieces by African authors.
Yeah. So yeah, I would definitely recommend that. Us more Africans, we try to read books from home, support our authors, and not just because we want to support them, but because they actually write really beautiful stories. So yeah. Anywho, we have gone out of topic, but just to bring us back, you did talk about, coming from Tanga, and now I want to know more about family. Growing up, how many kids were you in your family, and who were you in that mix? Were you the quiet one, the observer, the fixer? Who were you in the picture?
So, growing up, we were 3 siblings. We're 2 now. It was my elder brother, and then my elder sister, who was the middle child, and then me. And I would say I was not quiet. When I was young, I was very dynamic. I loved performing. I would wait till people gathered in the living room. I'd sing, I'd dance for anyone who's willing to watch. Definitely, I was definitely someone who just I had confidence. But the at the same time, I also enjoyed time to myself. I really picked up a love for reading when I was very young. So it wasn't just about spending time. I wasn't overly extroverted. I enjoyed quiet time. I enjoyed watching cartoons, reading books, and I enjoyed writing a few poems here and there quite early on. So that's who I was. A performer, I guess.
Okay, that's beautiful. And what was the atmosphere for you at home? So I'm just trying to think, like, if you're the performer and you still enjoyed your own private time, um, how supportive were your parents and the people around you in that way? Did they support the type of person that you were, or did they try to discipline that, or did they try to change that? How was that for you at home?
So we grew up in I come from a very loving home, and my parents were very expressive. And so was my elder brother. The atmosphere at home was sometimes tense because the middle child, my sister, she was a special needs child. So, in as much as everyone around was having fun as much as we could, there's always that sense of tension and, sometimes sorrow when one of your family members is, sick. But yeah, but as far as who I was, my personality, no one ever discouraged me from being who I am, from expressing myself. My father loved that I was very inquisitive. I had a lot of questions growing up, and he liked it because he's like, if you can learn from what you're asking, ask me away. I don't care how many times you ask me. So they were quite supportive. Yes, and my elder brother as well, he was very talented. He wrote a lot of like nice pieces. poems, stories. So he kind of just poured into me
Mm,
and encouraged me to like pick those things up
mm.
for myself. Yeah.
I love that. And then in school, so now that was the home setting. And then what about school? How was school like for you? Did you feel confident and did you feel as easily confident and as free as you were at home, or was that any different?
So at school, I had different fragments of experiences because I was schooled in different places. So growing up, I was
Mm,
quite confident when we are still in Dar es Salaam, but then we had to move because of my dad's job. We went to Addis Ababa and I spent like 10 years of my life there. And that kind of
mm,
changed. I'm sure we'll get more into that as our session progresses. But now, because
mm,
of the things I experienced there, my confidence just started dwindling and I wasn't that
mm,
outgoing person anymore. But yeah, in Dar es Salaam while schooling, it was the same. I always made friends easily. People gravitated towards me. I gravitated towards others. And it was quite a good time while I was schooling in Dar es Salaam. Yeah.
Okay. And then so what exactly changed when you moved? And how was that change for you? Because I know a lot of people have parents changing jobs and moving because of jobs. And I know I have friends that have experienced some challenges when they change where they live and they move to a new country. How was that change for you?
Well, it was quite a drastic change because the cultural setting was just different and the people that I now had to interact with behaved quite differently. So here in Dar es
Mm,
Salaam, there's such a heavy community centric culture and you're taught to
mm,
respect others earlier on, no matter
mm,
who you're talking to, if it's your peers or your parents or any stranger, but as you have to show manners. But, going
mm,
there now, I was in an international school, so that means there's children from different parts of the world. And sometimes
yeah.
some of the kids were coming from, customs that didn't really care much for that community type of life. And you could tell it translated in how some children behaved and how they spoke and how they
Mm,
interacted with others. So yeah,
mm.
there was definitely a huge change, and I realized quickly that I was no longer in Dar es Salaam.
And how did that affect you emotionally and the way you showed up in the world overall? Because I can assume that absolutely. For me, even moving from Tanzania and moving to a new country has been has been one of those things that I never really thought I would experience. Always been a community centric person. I love people. I love interactions. And then moving to a new country where everybody's busy, everybody is very privately living, and that sense of community barely exists. And if at all there is, you have to look for it. So like it's crazy. It's very puzzling how cultures, if you move just across the border, how different places choose to live in a completely different way. So that for me has been very impactful. So I would love to know for you, how did that affect you emotionally as well? Did you find yourself sometimes, getting into your little corner and really questioning why are things like this? Or did you find your voice to speak up and to try to make that change? How was that like for you?
I became quiet. I
Mm-hmm.
became quiet and I had friends. I definitely had friends, but I was in a different setting where I was in a place where things worked differently.
Mm,
There was a lot of Western influence culture, especially at my school. I know it was another
mm,
African country, but now you're talking about nationalities from everywhere. There was a lot of
mm,
Western influences. Some people weren't so nice. And of course, we were just children. So I summed that up to immaturity. But, people weren't as nice. Where in Tanzania, it's like, you will be nice, you will be respectful, and
mm,
that's embedded in us. But being there, people can make shallow comments, people can make fun of you for, what you look like, what type of clothes you have. Maybe they'll make fun of your accent.
mm,
You know, noticing a lot of changes, maybe Sometimes the atmosphere wasn't as warm or welcoming. It makes you sort of like you result to making yourself smaller because you think, well, if I'm not as
Mm,
noticeable, then I'm less of a target when it comes to
mm.
unsolicited opinions and, maybe not so kind remarks. So I shrunk
Yeah,
myself.
yeah, I can understand. And were there moments in your childhood where you were like, I want to speak, but then you chose silence instead? And what was going on inside of you then, particularly when you were in Addis Ababa?
Yes, there were many moments. I can't single out one just because there were so many.
Mm,
There were many moments where, people would just, kids being kids, people would make like mean comments and you want to stand up for yourself. But, I had fear. I wasn't
mm,
afraid because maybe I thought the other kids were bigger than me, but I began to think that what I had to say did not matter. Now, I
mm,
began to question my self-worth. And so there are many moments where I should have stood up for myself and said, you can't speak to me that way. You can't treat me that way.
mm.
But, because I started internalizing certain things and thinking, well, I don't really think my opinion matters anyway, I began to keep quiet. Yeah.
Okay, and did that also kind of trickled into your into how you showed up at home as well, or was that mainly at school and then at home was as normal?
I think at first my parents didn't notice. And again, they were very attentive parents. They still are till today. But again, when
Mm,
you're living with someone who has special needs in the home, a lot of the attention tends to gravitate towards them. So I think that was the
mm,
major reason why my parents didn't pick up on that soon enough or
mm,
sooner. They did eventually, but
mm.
yeah, but again, at home, I was much better off because my home was my safe haven. I could play my
Yeah.
computer games, I could watch my cartoons, I could read books, and, but I think one thing that they should have noticed is before I was very open to going outside and playing with other kids. But then after a
Mm,
while, I preferred playing by myself at home. I was
mm,
like in paradise when I'd play alone. I
yeah.
enjoyed spending time with myself. Those were the
Yeah.
major changes.
And I think for me, I'm just trying to think back to when I was in school, especially primary. There's a I've always been very outspoken, confident too, and easy to make friends as well. But I remember when I first moved schools, and I literally did not think I could fit in, and it took me a while. And I remember a teacher. Her name is Miss Rapper. She was Australian. She really yanked me to the field, anywhere. She was like, you need to go play with your friends. You need to make friends. You need to do this. And she literally pushed me, and I found my confidence again. So I'm just trying to think for you, did you have a particular teacher? Because I think teachers are sent from God, to be honest, at least the really good ones. So for me, I had a teacher that really, really helped me find myself and find my people that I could easily bond with, play with, and yeah, it made my overall school experience really, really beautiful. So did you have any particular teacher that really helped you kind of find yourself again in this new culture?
Yes. So I studied in two different schools when I was in Addis Ababa. In the second school, there were so many teachers that were super cool and very nice to
Mm,
us as students. But
mm,
one in particular really changed my outlook in life. So he didn't really his encouragement wasn't in regards to how I interact with other students, but he gave me confidence again. So his name is
mm,
Mr. Benjamin Newmark, British
mm,
man. We actually
mm,
talked like a few years back again, but
mm,
in the sixth grade, he taught us about slavery, obviously a very sensitive topic, especially
mm,
being someone of African descent. And we
mm,
had a class assignment, and he asked us to write a speech as if we were a civil rights activist. And of course, we had so many people to mirror, like one of them being Martin Luther King Jr. And so I wrote
mhm,
my speech and I was livid while I was writing it. I was super pissed, obviously.
mhm,
And then we get to class and he's like, okay, a couple people go and then I go, and it's not just an assignment, everything transforms. He looks at me and he smiles at me and he's like, okay, Martha, go. And I start like screaming my speech. I'm not even like reading it. I'm just screaming it. And I'm speaking loudly. And then Mr. Ben just loses it. And he's like, wow. And he even goes to another class, calls another teacher. He was very pleased. But seeing him happy it gave me a confidence that I'd not experienced since I left Dar es Salaam. You know, that performer, that person that was willing to be seen and heard by people. So Mr. Ben just woke that up in me, and yeah, I'll never forget him.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I'm visualizing that moment, looking at little Martha, performing, and yeah. And yeah, he celebrated you. He saw you in a completely different light. And I think when you have at least one person that can see you in ways that others don't, it literally changes the overall perspective that everyone around you also has of you. So teachers they're angels sent by God, I think. So we love him for that, and I'm happy because he's given us a chance to speak to you right now, as Hadithi Yangu, because it's very easy for one to lose their self-esteem and take it up until their adulthood. And so I love that. And then now when we started, you spoke about being education activist for Uplift Human Development Foundation, which is a youth-led organization working to advance equity and access to quality education for Tanzanian children. How did this come about? What's that moment that got you thinking and was like, you know what, I need to start something? And how does this tie back to your childhood experience?
That's a very good question. Before I explain the beginning of UHDF, I need to acknowledge someone else because UHDF began with me and a friend. Her name is Priska Bisendo. So we're co-founders, and we began this journey. We studied in university. We weren't in the same friend groups, but we've always had mutual respect for one another. We'd meet in the halls and we'd be like, I see you, hello. And so one day after uni, we meet up for coffee, and she had her own personal journey in community outreach programs. And I did too. When I was in school, I was doing like community services at orphanages. I was, when I was in university, I did internships for, their equality campaigns led by embassies, led by international organizations. And she had a similar experience. So both of us, our interests, our passions began when we were much younger. And then we lived completely individual lives. We were not together. We weren't brought up in the same place. And we met at uni. We weren't even friends then, but, God, or as fate would have it, we later on came together. In that coffee date or that coffee outing, we realized that we were both touched by the same things. We were looking at, we were discussing our passions, we were discussing children, we were discussing, like how children in difficult situations are not given the access to, you know, quality education. And yeah, we just decided, like, we keep talking about it. Why don't we do something about it? And that's how UHDF was born. Personally, I think I've always noticed I accept and recognize that I had a very comfortable life while in school, and I understand that I was awarded opportunities that my counterparts across the country may not have access to. And so from a young age, I recognized that I was, it was privilege. And so I decided I should care. I may not be able to relate to children in difficult situations, but that doesn't mean I cannot lend my voice or work towards improving other people's situations.
And why education? I love that, you found someone that you could work with, but I'm trying to see Tanzania and Africa as a whole. We have so many challenges. Why education? And I do know that you mentioned being privileged to be able to go maybe and access high quality education. What's something that drew you to specifically we have to focus on education as opposed to anything else?
Because I believe that education is one of the building blocks. It's foundational. So we deal with formal education, that's like
Mm,
education in classrooms, but we also mentioned that we deal with informal education. What this means is basically the training that people get from teachers, parents, guardians, malezi basically. And
mm,
the reason why is because we believe education together with, the people that are bringing up children they're setting the tone for how the person is going to behave once they're
mhm,
fully functional and involved member of the society. So it's the building block. When you educate someone and you give them access to a strong education, it's not just so they're qualified, but you give them the opportunity to be innovative, to be skilled, to come up with big ideas and to change the world. It has to start from the very beginning. It has to be from the
mm,
beginning. We can't change our future if we're not looking at our present. And what
mm,
presents our present are children. So that's why
mm.
education, it touches
Okay.
everything else, healthcare and everything else. It's touched by education.
Okay. I love that. And how does your personal story show up in the way you serve children, youth, and the community today?
It shows up in how I interact with the children. We're a youth-led organization and we're an organization for the youth, and we interact with children of different age groups, and I get to see myself in some of them based on how they behave.
Mm,
Some of them are very, secluded. They may not be the most confident. They may not be, you know, the most out there. And I love interacting with children like that because I can be a part of the reason why that mindset in them changes. Of course, again, as I
mm,
say, I understand I cannot relate to everything they're going through based on the
yeah.
fact that I have not experienced some of the challenges that they're experiencing. But in terms of ensuring that they know that they're valuable, they're worthy, and what they think and say matters. And they could
Mm,
be anything, they could do anything. They shouldn't shrink themselves or think some things are unattainable. They can literally scale through glass ceilings. And so I love interacting with children, and my own personal story helps me understand that, I have a role to play. I can be a
mm.
Mr. Ben for someone else.
And then now, could you give us an overview of how HDF works? How you reach these children? Do you guys have some sort of seminars? Is it a continuous program? If you could give us like some sort of like life cycle of how you guys work.
Right. So, yes, we do have seminars and we work with different partners. We work with orphanages, we work with schools. Primarily, programs are for children in less advantage situations, less privileged schools. So, those are our main demographic. But we
Mm,
also partner with schools that, are okay. We partner with good
mm,
schools. Well, we partner with schools that have more opportunities, and we involve students that study in more comfortable settings. And in a
mm,
way, before I go deeply into our programs, in a way, we don't want to seclude anyone. We want to ensure that our programs involve the programs may directly benefit a certain demographic of students, but we like to involve students that are from more privileged situations as well because they're our allies. They help us in
mm,
the programs. So we have different programs. We have environmental programs, we have mental health programs. We run them with schools, and we have clubs as well. We get to
Mm,
schools, we talk about UH, we talk about who we are and what we want to achieve, and we make the students understand that we're with them, we're working with them. They're not victims. They have ownership in our
mm,
programs. They're not people
mm,
that, we just go and pity and then, leave behind after we
mm,
take pictures. We have ongoing clubs.
mm,
These clubs are to enrich in the school programs. The environmental health programs are to enrich in the school curriculum, the environmental as well. And
mm,
hopefully in the future, we see ourselves also influencing policy because when you're talking about education reform and all of that, you're working with schools, but then you also have to work with government bodies in order to pass on laws that can benefit these students. So we have like a wide range. We advocate for better education, but we also have specific programs so we don't lose track of what we're doing, and so we're able to research and report on the work that we're doing.
mm. And how easy is it to access these students? 'Cause, I know for sure when you want to reach these kids, especially in schools, you have to interact with the school itself. How open are these schools into having this program at schools? Do they feel that it's of value? And how successful have you been so far with trying to implement this in different schools?
So, when you start anything, it's not easy, mostly because it may not be because what you're doing is not valuable, but it's because, when you walk up to someone, people are like, oh, okay, who are you and what are you doing? So
Mm,
it helps that we are registered, so we are recognized by the government.
mm,
And when you go talk to schools, let me say this, we do have access to students, but it's because we have, the proper registration and licensing. And when you want to go interact with students, you don't just go, you have to have permission from local government as well. And so when schools see that you have met all these criterias, they are actually quite
mm,
open. Now, of course, how
mm,
we run these programs with them is, you going to a school, they already have their school calendar and everything that they're going
mm,
to do. So sometimes they
mm,
may not be able to accommodate, not because they don't want to work with you, but because things are already set. But a lot of them have
mm.
been open to moving things around and, participating with us and working with us. So, yeah, I would say it hasn't been too difficult, mostly because we've adhered to all the government requirements, and that makes you more, schools are more open and more trusting when they see that.
Mm,
And of course, I will say this, it's a good thing that it's not as easy to access children, because would you
yeah.
want just anybody being, can easily
No,
access your child? No, you want to make sure
no,
that
absolutely not.
yeah, you want to make sure there's like a proper background check. These people are who they say they are. They have the right papers. That's what you want to make sure. So it's not as hard if you have the right permissions. And I am glad it's not as easy because that ensures the children's safety.
And then the children themselves, because I'm trying to think to younger Cecilia. Um, there would be different programs that will come to our school, and then sometimes I'm just like, this is boring. I'm too cool for this. I already know that. Like, what are you gonna tell me about global warming? I already know that. So, how open are the students themselves? Are they eager to learn, or are you having to push and to bring more of that awareness to them so that they're actually interested in coming to learn and joining the program? 'Cause I'm well, I would love to know whether is it something that then becomes mandatory, it's within the school curriculum, or is it in the clubs that they do after school, or is it something that they can just sign up for themselves?
No, it's definitely not mandatory, and we wouldn't want it to be that way. So there's a program called the UHDF Young Ambassadors, meaning that
Mm,
children can choose to be like members of UHDF. And when they have clubs, of course, there's teachers who are like sharing information about UHDF, going through our training modules and, conducting the activities that we have in the training modules. But the students that choose to be a part of it can help the teachers run these. And it shouldn't be a mandatory thing. I will say this, thank God all the children that we've interacted with have been happy and excited. And I think it's also how you approach children. We try to be as interactive as possible. And when I say interactive, I don't mean we go and then we start dancing around and, just to
Mm,
keep their attention spans. But what I mean is there's a way you present your that allows connection to happen. I'm very big
mm,
on connecting to whoever I'm engaging with because I want them to feel that what we are offering, what we're saying, what we're doing is of value. And one of the ways that you
mm,
can do that with children is not enforcing it, like this is a must. It's talking to children in a way where you respect them. One way that really
mhm,
works is you don't talk to children like they're children. Like you don't
mhm,
enforce it. You don't shove it down their throat and you don't act like they're too immature. They can't understand. You talk to them like they're your friends.
mm,
One of the words I like to use is we refer to them as part owners of the programs. They have the right to
mm,
the programs. So we make sure that it's a way that people can connect to what we're doing. It's not mandatory.
mhm.
We don't want it to be because we're not going to get the best results if it's something that's forced upon.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And how old is UHDF?
So we've started quite back. We started like around 2019.
Mm,
What of course, we've had to go through like legal registration processes to ensure that we're registered and we adhere to all laws that are
mm,
driving nonprofits. But I say we're a couple
mm,
years, and that came a little bit later because it's not an easy thing. But yeah,
mm.
we're a couple years old.
Okay, and apart from you and your co-founder, you did mention that you do work with other partners as well. But have you been able to find people, or do you work with a team of people that resonate with the same aspiration for UHDF? And how has that journey been in terms of recruiting? How easy has it been? Yeah, just to know because I was speaking to a friend of mine yesterday in regards to finding the right people for the right thing and finding talent and people who are equally passionate about something that you start sometimes can be challenging, but sometimes it can also be really easy because you find that there are people that want to do something in the area that you've started, but they just didn't know who was doing it. And finally, they find the person that is doing something that they would love to be part of. So I would love to know.
So given that we're like about 5 years old, in the beginning, it was just Priska and I. But as the years have gone by and the more we've become formal, now we have like formal working structures. We do have a team. We have a main team of founding members. So we have like a treasurer, like I'm the chairperson, there's a vice chair, which is Priska, and there's a treasurer, and we have someone for grants coordination. So there's like a main team, but we also have volunteers as well. And I will
Mm,
say this, I'm glad that the people we met, it happened naturally. We've never had to, like pitch ourselves like, hey, do you want to do this with us? You're going to like
mm,
working with us. We've never had to force it. I think we just met people who, had similar interests and, just meeting us. And then immediately they're like, yeah, I like this and
mm.
I feel that I want to participate in this. I want to join you. I want to be a part of this team. So that's been our, how our organization has been able to grow from 2 people to multiple members now. Of course,
Uh,
the more like down the road, we anticipate there's going to be more departments, more things to do. So now the recruitment is going to have to be like more formal, and it's going to be based on what people can do, what the role is. I'll say we've never had an issue finding people that are talented that also want to join our cause. Yeah. We've been very careful to ensure that. So, nonprofit is not like for profit. You either have the heart for it or you don't. So, yes, there's technical skills that we need. Maybe we need accounting. Maybe we need someone who's good at, IT, graphics, social media. We all need that. But beyond that, we require someone who trusts in the mission, believes in what we're doing, is interested in working with us. So you shouldn't just be part of the team just because. You should believe in the cause and what we're doing.
Yeah. And then with the program, are you guys mostly in Dar es Salaam, or do you go outside of Dar es Salaam as well?
So currently we're working only in Dar es Salaam. And there's a reason why we chose to do that. We want to ensure that our impact is solidified and it's strong here before we branch out to other places. We believe that, once we start branching out, we're going to have to maintain the same standards of the work that we're doing in Dar es Salaam. So we want to ensure that we're completely and properly solidified before we start branching out.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good. And now looking back, you've shared a lot about your journey, about how you guys started UHDF and where you are now. But looking back, what part of your journey do you feel most proud of? Not the most visible one, but the most meaningful to you, because as a starter, as someone that chooses a path that, as you said, it's nonprofit, it's something that you have to be completely passionate about and you have to have your whole heart in it. So what part of your journey do you feel most proud of in this whole experience?
I'd say actually starting. Actually starting. It was the most difficult part. When you want to start anything, when you want to formalize it, when you start following procedures on how to formalize it, if you're not passionate, following the procedures to ensure that you're formally registered and everything, you could be like, "Ah, what am I doing this for?" And just stop right there and then. And also, a lot of people want to start so many things. We talk ourselves out of it. We rationalize why we shouldn't. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm sure when you were starting Hadithi Yangu, maybe you had a couple thoughts of why you
Yeah,
shouldn't.
absolutely. Yep. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yes. So I'd say just fighting the reasoning of not getting started and just actually getting up and doing it. You want to start when you're perfect. You want to start when you have all the resources, when you have everything figured out. But just starting anyway, I think that's what I'm most proud of, having the courage to
I love
start.
that. Yeah, I love that. I love people that start. Starters are my favorite people. It's just wow. Yeah. And we're gonna be finishing just in a few, but if you could sit with Martha, the younger version of yourself, the one that felt unseen, the one that felt like she was losing her voice, especially after moving, what would you gently tell her today?
I tell her she matters. Tell her,
Mm.
just like everyone else, she has a purpose. She has worth, as we all do. And what she has to say, what she has to think matters. I'd also tell her
Mm.
that impact and changing the world doesn't have to be loud. You don't have to be the
Mm.
loudest, and you don't have to do the most. Just be true to who you are, and whatever you're involved in, genuinely working hard and being confident enough to speak your mind and, give your
Mm.
opinions. I think that's what
Mm.
I'd tell her.
Yeah, I love that. And then I was like, okay, I remember when I was in, I think, fifth grade, I wanted to be a ballerina. And do not ask me why. It's one of the. It's funny, but it's not funny. I know this is someone's actual career, but for some reason, I was convinced that I could be a ballerina, and not because I wanted to do the training for it, but because I just really loved the shoes. I thought they were really cute, so I was like, I want to be a ballerina because the shoes are cute. It's one of those things, but I'm just trying to think, younger Martha, what did you envision your life would be? Because now you you are doing something extremely wonderful and impactful. What was Martha's dream before she decided to take this route?
I had many dreams, some more ridiculous than others. Every week I'd have something like different. At one point I wanted to be a newscaster. At one point I wanted to be a poet. I wanted to be a singer. And then at 14, when I found out like what my dad actually does for a job, I was like, yes, I want to do that. From 14 till I was like in my early 20s, that's all I wanted to be. I was like, I want to be a diplomat. I want to be a diplomat. I want to be a diplomat. But then as I started understanding who I am and noticing the things that I'm drawn to, the things that I've always been interested in, I think it was a no-brainer. I remember talking to Mr. Ben like 2 years ago, and I told him, like, I'm in advocacy work. And he's like, Martha, there's no better fit for you. It makes perfect sense. So, yeah.
Oh wow. And then did home, because you just mentioned that for a long time you thought, okay, I want to be a diplomat. Did the home setting and what your parents did for work have a lot of influence, and did you actually really understand what that meant? Because sometimes we look at people in their professional setting and then they look cool, but the work behind it, we don't understand. So did you understand what that entailed, or is it just something that you thought looked cool? And at all, did you also look at what your mother was doing maybe for work, and you're like, okay, I could also be that? Did that fluctuate because of home, or what was that like?
So I actually, to the best of my knowledge, the best that I could, because I was around 14, but when I was younger than that, my dad used to take me to work a lot of times, actually. And so I knew that, at the time I understood that, diplomats, dealt with international relations, foreign policy, foreign relations. And, of course, when you're thinking about that, you're thinking traveling and meetings and conferences. But I also saw the things that, the sacrifices. My dad was very involved, but, half of the time he was not around. He was quite busy. And when I'd go to his office, there was like a lot of paperwork. There was a lot of things he had to write. So I saw the work behind it. And I understand that was the tip of the iceberg. I probably didn't understand everything that it entailed. But I did see the difficult aspect. I did see the sacrificial aspect as well. So I understood that it wasn't like, all fun and living off a suitcase. There was actual hard work behind it. And yeah, I think from the point I was 14 years old, nothing fluctuated for me. I was like, I want to be a diplomat, and I want to make Baba proud and Mama proud, and I want to do exactly what my dad did. So it never fluctuated. It was always like that one thing targeted.
And did that also influence what you did in school for university and everything else after that?
It did. I took law. I studied law, and in order to, for international relations or to be a diplomat or to be in that field, you could study political science and international relations. You could study law. You could study economics. I chose law because I felt like I could pursue that route, but I'd have more options in terms of like where my career could land. And I'm glad I took law because I'm not working towards being a diplomat, but in my advocacy work and in my nonprofit work, law is such a fundamental addition. I'm glad I studied law. So it's like, wow, it worked out anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And just as we're finishing off, I love to ask this question because it leaves the listener thinking and reflecting, even with their own personal life. For anyone listening who feels like their voice doesn't matter, what do you hope they take from your story today?
I hope they don't sit in silence and wait till they're old and frail to regret all the things that they could have done. I want people to understand that we're on borrowed time. I don't want to end this on a somber note, but the truth is, You were given this time to do with it what you were meant to do. If you feel a push, listen to that voice inside you. And it doesn't have to be nonprofit work. It doesn't even have to be anything that would put you in front of multiple people. It could be the most ordinary thing for you. That's fine. Impact does not mean loud. It does not mean seen. But whatever your heart is pushing you to do, and your mind is telling you you're not confident enough, you're not worthy, you're not strong enough, you can't do it, there's no way it can happen for you. Please understand that you were given this time to make things happen. Don't think I'll do it next year or I'll do it in 20 years. You are alive to make things happen. Whatever you want to do, whatever you think it is, no matter how big, no matter how small, just do it. I know it's not as easy, but take the first step. It could be the beginning of something really beautiful for you.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you. I also needed to hear that. So thank you so much, Martha. Just before we finish, do you have any final remarks? Anything you'd love to, any shout out, anything?
Shout out to my support system. I have a very wonderful support system, family and friends. Shout out to Priska. UHDF would be nothing without her. And shout out to the rest of the team. I love them so much. But also shout out to you because, you've been a wonderful host. And please, when you are in Tanzania, niambie tu, niambie. Kitaka nikupeleke Tanga, twende, like whatever you want to do, girl, I'm here. So shout out to you.
Thank you so much. I'll definitely reach out. And something that I love to tell my guests, Yamani, once we've spoken for at least an hour, it's marking an hour. We are now buddies. So please, let's keep in touch. Let's support each other. I'm gonna be your number one fan here moving forward. I love to understand the why behind why people do what they do. And I'm convinced the work that you guys are doing is beautiful. It's impactful. So please, let's keep in touch. And shout out to you for taking that first step with your co-founder, Priska. And it's not easy. It's not easy to start. It's not easy to be the person that everybody is looking up to for things to work. And you guys are doing that. So good job. Well done. And please, let's keep in touch. And I would love... Have you been to Mbeya?
I've not been to Mbeya, but I want to, girl. I've heard nice things about Mbeya.
Girl, I'll take you. So when I'm back, let's plan for that.
We'll talk. Have a nice day.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Dear listener, thank you for taking this journey with us. We are so grateful to have you on board. To help us grow, please share this show with a friend. Don't forget to subscribe. We are on Instagram and TikTok under the name Hadithi Yangu Podcast. We would love to hear from you. Share your feedback. And if you have a story you want to share with the world, send us a DM or an email on hadithiyangupodcast@gmail.com.